using number 9 wire here. On one end we have a W bent, just kind of a series of bends so we can snake that cable through there and actually hold our snare in position. Very effective and very simple. On the opposite end here we have another small bend, and that's to just kind of hold this support wire in the ground so it won't twist on you. You want to make sure that that snare doesn't twist and move around in the wind. You might be thinking, well shoot, in frozen conditions, how am I going to get that support wire in the ground? Well, I have several support wires rigged up with railroad spikes on the end, or you can carry railroad spikes with you and twist up the support wires that are made up like this to be with the railroad spike on them. That way you can just drive that right in frozen ground and hold that support wire up. Earlier Jerry showed the type of snares that we like to use. I've got another one here. It's 3/32, 7x7 aircraft. We got a deer stop there at the proper South Dakota legal limit. We're using Hoffman locks because they fire fast and lock down tight. This is a 60-inch snare, 5-footer. That's what I personally prefer, and that's what Jerry makes up for me. Again, we have the heavy washer in there and then the aluminum ferrules. I also like to have a double swivel set up on mine. We can see here I've just got a stake swivel hooked onto the end of the wire swivel that Jerry puts on for me. That way I can drive a stake through that stake swivel. Got a lot of swivel action around the stake, just like in dirt trapping, but also I've got a double swivel set up. It's pretty handy. Now for snaring and fences, which is the first type of set that I'm going to show, hopefully we'll be able to find a place where the coyotes are going through the fence. But I really want to show a fence type setup. I prefer a 40-inch snare for snaring and fences because of the quick entanglement, where your fox and coyotes aren't going to get away. They're not going to be pulling around and making a big circle like a stake set. They're going to hang themselves in the fence pretty quick, so you don't need a lot of cable for that. This is a 40-inch snare here. I'd like to show the method that Keith Gregerson uses to rig his snares up for a fence type situation. In fact, he uses it for all the types of snaring he does. He doesn't go with the heavier support wires like that I personally prefer. He uses more of a 14-gauge wire setup, and I'm going to show you how to rig that up here real quick. Just take a roll, standard annealed 14.5 gauge wire, and run you out a fair quantity of it. Remember, it's better to have too much wire than not enough when you're hooking up. Always carry some pliers with you when you're snaring. I carry mine right on my hip. Cut that wire there. And then we need to double this 14.5 because it's just not enough. There's just not enough wire there to hold a coyote. Maybe one strand would hold a fox, but you always want to try to stake or support for the largest animal you're going to get. You'll notice here too that I'm not going to make this double all the way even. I'm going to leave one strand a little bit longer than the other. That's important because that'll help you when you get to the hooking your snare on this wire to make it effective. Okay, we get it split up here. I'm going to stand up and stand on one end of the wire. I'm just standing on one end of it, pulling it taut. I'm going to kind of make a crank out of the other end and just kind of work that wire. Well, actually double it. Kind of just wind it together so it all fits in real nice. Then I'll take my 40-inch snare here and run the swivel down through, about a foot from the long end. I'm about a foot from the long end here, and then I'm going to bend both wires over, kind of loop it through. That type of a thing. Then I want to start and get a wrap. Once I get a good wrap on that wire, I want to take that long wire and point it back up towards the front. Point it back up towards my swivel. Then I can just go ahead and twist up the shorter wire. Just twist it right up on the snare wire itself there. Okay, the longer wire, I want to run back up to the barrel of the swivel. Now the barrel of the swivel is where it's all twisted together here. I want to run it up nice and tight. Remember, letting the cable just lay. You want to work with the memory of the cable all the time. Just let it lay across, just let it lay out there where it wants to work. We get up here on the barrel, then take that and wrap that a couple wraps around the barrel of the swivel to hold the barrel of that swivel. We'll leave a little tail on that wire here, and then we'll just bend it. And then I'm going to put a little horseshoe shape in there. And that'll be my little cradle for my cable. I'm just bending a horseshoe type shape in there. Might be tough to see. I kind of bend it up here a little bit. Nice horseshoe shape. That's just to cradle that cable in there. And I'll just bend it down around and actually just put my cable inside there. Now Keith has his pretty much wired up ahead of time. He'll just wrap this whole ball of wax up. Get your snare loop. The proper way to wrap a snare up is to always work with the memory of the cable. Don't twist, kink, or bind that cable. Let it roll with you. You get around here to this heavier wire, put a little bit of a roll in that, and then just wind it up. You get to the end of the tail, just maybe run it through once to hold it all together. Now that's the way Keith would work his snares together. And when we get to a fence situation, I'm going to set this snare in that fence. Put that down in our bag here. Now the way I like to have mine for general snaring, I'm using support wires all the time, is I'll take 2 snares and put a bread tie around them. So that way when I get to a location, it's just a regular bread tie or what would come with lawn bags. When I get to a location, I reach in my truck and grab some snares out. I'm always grabbing 2 snares at a time. 2 snares, 2 support wires, 2 stakes. That way whenever I'm setting 2 snares at a time. Very important because when I'm pulling up, I know that I've got 2 to pull, or 4 to pull, or 6 to pull. It's always in multiples of 2, and that way I don't leave any snares in the field. Snaring's under a lot of pressure. A lot of people, snares are so cheap, a lot of people leave them out. It's kind of a bad practice. We don't want to do that, so it's a good idea if you can come up with a system that keeps track of what you're doing out in the field. If I go into an area and pull 3 snares, I know that there's still 1 snare out there someplace, and I look until I find it. Doesn't really matter what type of system you use, as long as you use a system that keeps you organized, keeps you thinking about good snare locations, how many snares you've got out, and keeps everything in order in your own mind. To me, that's the most important thing of all.